life is not always just happening to us. I think that is very scapegoat material. It's very, I don't want to be accountable for my actions. It's very, I don't want to take responsibility for my life. And I'm not meaning to say that everything that happens in your life is going to be your fault. But what I am saying is when you grow and you learn to be more sensible, you start to take accountability. There was a video that I posted about this topic of generational curses and how we have to be aware of the tricks of the enemy because he doesn't really do new tricks. If it worked on your grandma and it worked on your mama, he's going to do the same thing to you. If it worked on your grandpa and it worked on your daddy, he's going to do the same thing to you. And when I talked about this in the video, I gave one example. Now, y'all know we done had conversations about people being dense, and y'all know we had conversations about people not being all there and people not actively listening. So we anticipate that things like this are going to happen, and I'm okay with that because it also brings to light more issues and it helps us to talk about things on a deeper level and to expose like some of the levels of confusion that people have. So when I made that video, most people knew what I was saying, even though there were a few people who got really hung up on the example. And let me tell you what I mean. When I say some people got caught up on the example I gave was if you grew up and it's a family of single mothers, no dads in the home, what does that tell you? That tells you that generational curse of having children out of wedlock, or maybe, and this is why I say I gave an example, and I sometimes get upset with the way that people cannot comprehend exactly what a person is trying to say without trying to villainize it. But I also think, again, y'all, that has a lot to do with the fact that people speak through their traumas and triggers. So I didn't take a bunch of time to specify the example because the example wasn't the point. But the point that I made was that example was, the point that I'm trying to make right now is just to give you the example so that we can kind of move forward with what we were talking about. But I was saying how if you cannot see that this is a problem, you're probably going to end up being a single mom too, right? And I went on to say, it's not just, it's the enemy's fault, because we also need to take accountability for doing things, right? Like grandma needs to be accountable for laying down with a man she wasn't married to. Mama needs to be accountable for laying down with a man that she wasn't married to. Now, generally speaking, again, I sometimes forget that I have to clarify every single point because, again, there are people who are like, well, being married isn't the solution. Sometimes you get married and, it's abuse in the bloodline, to which I agree. And most of the people who were saying that, I said, yes, that too is a generational curse. It does not change. The purpose of what I was saying is the enemy doesn't use new tricks, right? And so if the enemy doesn't use new tricks, it doesn't matter what the tricks are. I'm just giving you an example. Take it and apply it. And there were some people who got bent out of shape thinking that I was saying something that I wasn't saying, trying to make it about marriage, trying to make it about how all marriages are imperfect. Stop telling people to get married when that's not even the point of the video. But again, I digress. So when we have these conversations, I think we have to realize that, yes, life circumstances will happen. You can get robbed tomorrow to no fault of your own. It's not your fault that somebody came up and robbed you, right? It's absolutely not your fault that you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Unless you're a flashy person and you draw too much attention to yourself, still not your fault because people should not target you in that way. But in that case, where's the self-reflection? Maybe I need to tone it down a notch. Maybe I need to not be so flashy and tell everybody about how much money I have, right? But I'm talking about just a regular case of robbery. It's not your fault. But everything that you do after that robbery, it's up to you. You can either play the victim for the next 10 years, or you can get up, report it, do what you got to do, and do your best to pick up the pieces and move forward, right? In the case of someone basically said in another comment, she was like, this isn't sound advice that you're giving. I wasn't giving advice in the video, but she was like, this isn't sound advice. It doesn't always work like that. Stuff happens in people's life. And I very rarely interact with people at this point in my life. I rarely interact with people who think like that, because to me, as much as people want to say this is dangerous rhetoric, this is harmful, I think that's dangerous rhetoric, to sit there and say that life is just happening to you. Those are the type of people who watch their life happen over and over again, find themselves in situation after situation, and they do nothing to change it. And then they get old and they're bitter and they're jealous and envious of other people. We all have the ability to take action in some regard. We can't all clean up our lives overnight, but we can make better decisions. So what am I really getting at here with a generational curse thing? So if you are in a family where there's always marriage, but it ends in divorce, okay, what I'm saying is you should recognize that and maybe not rush into marriage without doing some homework. Maybe try to figure out, with this man that you're dating, what are some of the things that you don't know about him? Is there alcoholism in his family? Is there abuse in his family? Does he know his father? Are there any things that I can figure out or dig out before I just go and walk down the aisle with him? My problem that I have is you can't control that man or anything that he does, but you can control how much diligence you do before getting into that relationship. Have you consulted God? Have you asked God to show you about this man? Most of the time the answer is no, because we're so in our flesh and we're so in this world and we wear Jesus like a badge of honor. But most of us are not really in tune. We're not seeking after God. We're not fasting and praying, because who has time for that? And again, if this stings deep, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to keep going. When you're presented with something like that, it's your job now to not let life just happen to you. It happened to my grandma. It happened to my great grandma. It happened to my mama. All of them got married and they got divorced for the same reason. The men were abusive. They were laying their seeds everywhere and sowing wild oats, and they had children all across America, right? I then need to not take it lightly that there's this man who wants to marry me. I need to do my homework. How do I do my homework? Again, it's going to talk to his family. It's spending more time asking questions about things. But the best thing you can do is go to God in prayer and wait. Be patient. Stop trying to rush God. Maybe in time, he will show you some things that you need to see. And the thing that we need to start doing in relationships before it gets to marriage, this is something that comes up so much in my content, where women will ask in a video where I'm talking about husbands and wives, they'll ask about their boyfriend. And it's not something that particularly frustrates me, but it makes me realize that we're not having conversations in our society about how there is a difference between your boyfriend and your husband. I might tell you to show your husband some grace. I'm not telling you to show no boyfriend no type of grace, because the second you see a red flag in a boyfriend, you better get up out of there and stop being stupid. You better stop it right now. And so these are the things that I feel like we actually need to talk about, because yes, it is easy to say, well, nobody knows what it's like to be in an abusive relationship. I don't know what that's like, right? And that does not mean that it is still not something that could have been a generational curse. That is not blaming you. And the problem that we have as a society, and why I always say we are just cooked, we are just well done, just beef jerky. It's because we don't want to take responsibility for our portion. We don't want to own our part. We don't want to, we just want to throw all the responsibility on everyone else. He's abusive and that's it. Okay, he's abusive. You divorced him. Are you now going to teach your daughters what you now know? Or are you going to let that cycle continue? Are you now going to get on your knees and pray, possibly repent for choosing a man before you went to God about this man? And these are things that make us so uncomfortable, but they make us uncomfortable because we want to pretend like life just happens to us. Even when it comes to things like poverty, it's a touchy subject because, like I say, some people idolize their poverty. Even when we talk about things like that, we just want to put the blame on the government. It's the government's fault. It's these jobs. They don't pay enough. It's this, it's that. It's always something, but it's never you. You got 4 kids and you're a single mother and you're complaining about poverty, but the one thing you could control was not opening up your legs for that man over and over again to give him more kids. But we don't want to hear that. Because, well, I didn't make the babies by myself. I didn't say that you did. Right? And here's the thing that we also have to stop doing. You can't control other people. And I'm going to say this too, because I say the single mother example, but I want to make this clear that this could be your husband too. And this is why I often tell women when they go to complaining about their husbands, I'm like, is this something that he woke up yesterday and started doing, or was he always doing it? Because if you married him knowing that he was doing it, you're being unfair and hoping that he's going to change, aren't you? And so when we have these conversations, we really have to be vulnerable, and we really have to be ready to put our accountability pants on, and we have to be more solutions based. We can't just be victims forever. We can't just sit here and cry and woe is me and this isn't fair and life is just happening to me, because life is not happening to you. A lot of these things are cycles, and you're not praying yourself out, and you don't want to pray yourself out, and you want to continue to be a victim. So when someone calls you out on these things, and when someone points these things out and it makes you uncomfortable and it touches your idols and it pulls at your little triggers, now you want to yell and scream. And you want to say that this person is, I don't know, make up the term of the day, racist. I think if I was a white lady saying this, God forbid, everybody would call me racist. And it's not that I'm trying to be mean or rude, but I realize there are certain conversations, because we are not having them, we are becoming degenerative, and we're repeating the things that our previous generations did. And another thing that happens is we blame everything on everything. So something else I mentioned in that video was like, we need our elders. And I also say, we need sensible elders, because I understand some of these elders out here still trying to be youthful people. They ain't worth a dime, right? Like the grandmas is acting like they in the club. The grandmas is in the club. They in the club more than the daughters are. Okay, I get it. Some of them are working. Some of them are not available. Some of them, when they are available, their advice is not worth a lick. I'm talking about wise counsel, because it is still out there. And if you don't have wise counsel, we have to take responsibility for what we see. Again, if nobody has ever warned you against these things, but you see it happening over and over, if everybody was poverty stricken in your family and you see it happening over and over, you need to go to God and be like, God, what is this and how do I break it? God, help me with my overspending. Because again, going back to the poverty and the poor conversation, a lot of us are keeping ourselves impoverished by our decisions. And I understand that the cycle of poverty is not the easiest thing to break, but some of us increase the burden. Some of us increase the burden. And I understand, like I said, it's very easy to get into a place where you feel like, well, I deserve to have this and I deserve to have that. But when you start splurging and treating yourself into deeper pits of poverty, you have to self-reflect and you have to take accountability for those things. Some of these things are by circumstance. Yes, some of these things are by design. But the level and the pits to which we get ourselves deeply entrenched in it, it's us. So as a woman who is from a family where nobody went to college, everybody dropped out of high school, and you live in a community where that is a normal thing, your exposure to a quality of man who is educated is going to be limited. That is a circumstance that you have no control over. If you're born into poverty, that is a circumstance that you have no control over. However, at some point, you have to say, everything that I do after knowing this is my responsibility. So if you are a young woman who is in that circumstance and you see what is happening and you pay attention to those things, it's your job now to go to God and pray about that situation. Ask him to give you guidance. Ask him to get you out of that cycle. And don't make any stupid decisions in doing it. And if you make stupid decisions in doing it, i.e. having unprotected sex before marriage and you get pregnant, guess what? You have to own those decisions. You do. So it's not about life doesn't happen to me. It's about it's not all life happening to me. We have to own up to the stuff that we can take control of, y'all. And I know it's an uncomfortable conversation. I know that you have some things that are beyond your control. But we have to do what we can because everything is not beyond your control. And that is a marker of people who will stay in the position that they're currently in for the rest of their lives. This belief that there's nothing that I can do and life just happens to me. A person who is always complaining, get from around me, okay? And this is so important, y'all. This is so very important because if we continue to follow these cycles of blaming everybody else, what we end up doing is just coddling ourselves. We overcomfort ourselves in our positions. And then if you think that it's okay, are you ever going to do anything different? No. And the truth is, to get out of some of these situations, it's uncomfortable. Fasting and praying is uncomfortable because when you're fasting, you need to be praying very diligently. It's something that can completely disrupt your life. Right? Like, because you're not just not eating. A lot of people think that fasting is just, oh, I stopped eating. If you stopped eating for 3 days and you didn't pray and communicate with God and get in your word, you didn't really fast. You just starved yourself for 3 days. I don't know. So it's not an easy thing to do. But when I tell you, when you start to notice these things and when you start to take more responsibility for your life, the actions that you take, the things that come about in your life, and you really start to go to God about these things, He will show you the answers. And then I think the truth is people know these things. We don't want to be responsible for doing anything, and that's why we pretend like life just happens to us. I think a good bit of people actually do know and they understand, but it's easier for them to justify the position that they continue to stay in by saying, oh, this just happens to me. And the thing that is so comforting to me when I go through things is like, oh, it's so many people in the world. I'm not the first person to go through this, and I won't be the last person to go through this. I don't know if that's going to be comfort for you, but for me, it's comforting because what does that mean? If I wasn't the first person to go through it and I won't be the last person to go through it, that means this is not a unique experience that I'm the only person in the world that has ever experienced it. That also means that if other people have gone through it, some of them probably came out of it. So there must be a solution. It also means if other people are going to go through it, I'm not the only crazy person. Like, I'm not the only person that slipped and fell. There's other people too. And if there's more people that are going to go through it, I have a responsibility to get myself out of it so that I can show other people how to do the same thing. And this is not even so much of like a faith thing. And this is not an argument about like, oh, working for your salvation, because I think a lot of people get that wrong too. We think that anything that we do on our own or any action that we take to fix a problem is like, oh, you're trying to work for your salvation. That too, I think, is just people being lazy. Because if I have faith, I know God's going to deliver me from the things, but I still need to do my part. Again, I still need to fast and pray. Again, I still need to make better decisions. I need to ask God for wisdom. I need to ask God to give me discernment. I need to ask Him about everything, and I need to be patient until He answers me. And all of these things add up to be a person who makes better decisions and can be more practical. Because we've all had our fair share of bad decisions. But the thing is, if you allow bad decisions to keep happening over and over and over again, you're accepting the doom. You're accepting the fate that you're placing yourself in. And when people call it out, you think that those people are being mean. They're not being mean. People are trying to help you. Because I'm telling you, if you look at your every family has patterns, good or bad. And something that I notice is I have friends. I didn't grow up in a household where my parents were married. I actually never even saw my parents together. They split up before, I don't know, I was probably like 1 or 2, probably like 1. I don't know, probably before I was 1. I don't even know the age that happened, but I know that they were not together. And it's something that growing up, I remember thinking like, I don't want my children to grow up like that. And so even though I didn't have all the answers, when I started to see little things here and there, I would take notes of those things. I didn't have the bandwidth in the understanding of how God plays into these things and generational curses until I was an adult and already married. That's why I talk so much about this, because I feel like I said earlier, there are some things that other people might go through and I have the solution. So it's my job to speak up about those things. If I past a pothole and I dodged it, and I know my sister's going down the same street, why wouldn't I tell her, hey, they got a pothole up there, get on the right side of the street? Like, I don't understand why we think that this is any different. People are so busy thinking that you're trying to judge them when really all you're trying to do is help them. So what I noticed, though, was my mom, as a single parent, was very strong-willed. And all of the relationships that I watched her have as a child, and even when she got married and ended up getting divorced, I realized it was because she had always had to be this strong woman because she was a single mother raising 3 kids, and she did not know how to be submitted. She didn't know how to allow a man to come in and be a man and take care of her. And so that was problematic. She probably didn't always have the best decision making when it came to men either, and that's okay. But that is the thing that I learned watching my mom. The thing that I learned watching my dad was what I wanted in a man, right? But also watching, he was married to my stepmom and they got a divorce, and seeing how that played out, I learned the importance of prioritizing your husband and not overextending yourself to your children. And then when I was blessed enough to meet my 2 closest friends, they both come from 2-parent households, married all their life, still married, had all of their children with the same people. And I'm watching them, my friends who came from those parents. One of my friends, all of her siblings, like she and her siblings are all married, have children, doing very well, established, living the cookie cutter American life. 2-parent household, children, everybody has careers, very successful. And then my other friend, it's only 2 of them, but she's the oldest. She's married. She now has a baby. And her sister is not much younger than us, but her sister is also, she's living at home. She has a career, and I believe that she will be married very soon. And it's almost like I don't think that those families spent time drilling things into their children's head so much as they made decisions that their children could see, and it was the norm. So when you come from that, that is a healthy thing that you're actually going to get into, right? Now, I'm not saying that they don't have any issues. Maybe they do have issues that they struggle with. Maybe they do have little family things that somebody has not prayed against and they creep up generation after generation. I don't know, right? I'm not trying to glorify the actual marriage. What I'm pointing out here is generationally, it's almost an expectation that you're going to get married and have children. It's not like we don't do that over here, right? And so if all you see is single motherhood, even if that's not what you want to end up doing, you're more likely to end up in that position. If all you see is college graduates in your family, you're more likely going to end up in that position. It's harder to be the first person to do something than it is to be the person who is just continuing to do something that was modeled and that was normal. And this is where people start to talk about like classism and all of this stuff. But yes, part of it is that. Part of it is inaccessibility to things. Just like I said, a young lady that grows up in an environment where she has limited access to good quality men, she would have to put herself in a position where she is not in that situation, right? She may have to go to college away from home and get away from that environment that she's so used to. She may have to be very diligent about where she chooses to go to work. And I'm not saying that she should do all these things to find a suitor, but more so to change her environment so that she can actually make something of herself and so that she can feel worthy of deserving better. But all of this starts with noticing the thing, paying attention to it, praying against it, breaking those things, and going to God. And again, it's not, we have to just move out of the place of everything is just happening to me, and we have to be able to get into a space of why did this happen. So one of the comments that I got was just that the lady was like, you don't know people's life to make these kind of comments, and you know, sometimes things just happen. Yes, I get that. But again, my question remains, when things just happen, what do we do? If my car breaks down, what do I do? If that was my only means of transportation, what then do I do? If something in my life goes wrong, what then do I do? The thing that happened, I had no control over it, but I still have to address the fact that it happened. So if you do get into a relationship, you do get married to this man turns out to be abusive, and you have to leave to protect you and your children, what do you do after that? Yes, life has happened, but what do we do after that? Do I look back as a sensible person when something doesn't work out? I want to know why. What did I do? What part did I play? Did I overlook if this man is abusive? Was he always aggressive? We went on that date and I was late one time and he was a little angry. I overlooked it. He was a little snappy that day. And in these things, we think that looking back and reflecting on things in that way are us blaming ourselves. It's not. It's you taking responsibility for the choice that you made. Okay, it was always in him. Okay, no, he wasn't like that. He masked it pretty well. Why do we always have abusive men in our family? God, what is this? Show this to me. And be patient about figuring it out. It doesn't mean you need to go back to the man who was abusing you, but you can't skip this step, because then you skip this step. You don't pray against it. You don't go forth educating your children on the same thing. If you have sons, teaching them. If you have daughters, teaching them. Your children are going to end up in the same situation as you. And what a waste of wisdom. What a waste of time. What a waste of opportunity for you to break a cycle of bad habits, for you to break a cycle of destruction. And I think we don't think about it in that regard. And that's why it's so easy for us to just be like, oh, it's not my fault. Like, we're just the most happenstance generation that I've ever seen. Like, I get why people make fun of us. I get why the older generations make fun of us, because yes, times are different. Yes, things are harder, but that it's just not an excuse to live this careless life and to not be intentional with anything. It's just not an excuse. And I also understand why people grow weary when teaching and when educating people, because it can be exhausting. It can be exhausting talking to a bunch of people, or talking to people, or trying to reach through to people when all they want to do is cling to their excuses. So yes, life does happen to us. Yes, there are circumstances that are far beyond our control. But what are we going to do about it?